Lecture 32, The Failure Envelope. The figure to the left shows a rock sample after failure. The sample fails along a shear fracture plane P2. The figure to the right shows the Mohr circle for this situation. The point P2 represents the normal and shear tractions acting on the fracture. Notice that the shear fracture does not form at the maximum shear stress P1, but at the maximum ratio between the shear and normal tractions on the plane, which is at P2. The angle between the normal to P2 and sigma 1 is theta. 2 theta in the Mohr circle is equal to 90 plus the angle phi. Strength increases with confining pressure. The small gray circle is a triaxial test at low confining pressure. 2 theta is the angle between the normal to the fracture and sigma 1. For a new and higher confining pressure, the same differential stress will not break the sample. We need more differential stress and the circle at fracturing will be larger. We can run several tests at increasing confining pressure. In the Mohr circle for each test, we can draw the angle 2 theta and the point at failure. We can then join the points at failure of the different tests to reconstruct the failure envelope. The failure envelope defines stable and unstable states of stress. A is a stable state of stress where the Mohr circle is inside the envelope. B is a critical state where the circle touches the failure envelope, this is when the rock fails. C is an unstable state of stress, where the circle is larger than the required circle for failure. This state of stress is not possible. The failure envelope has 4 characteristic fields. Fields 1 and 2 are the tensile regime. Field 3 is the frictional regime. And field 4 is the ductile regime. Notice that in fields 3 and 4, phi is the slope of the failure envelope. Field 1 is the pure tensile behavior. The sample fails when the minimum principal stress, sigma 3, reaches the tensile strength, T0. Fractures form parallel to sigma 1 and perpendicular to sigma 3. Since the Mohr circle intersects the failure envelope at sigma 3, there is no shear stress on the fractures, and they are joints instead of shear fractures. Field 2 is the transitional tensile behavior. This occurs when sigma 1 is about 3 times T0. Fractures form at 30 degrees to parallel to sigma 1, so 2 theta is from 120 to 180 degrees, and phi is from 30 to 90 degrees. In field 2, the shape of the failure envelope is determined by cracks in the material. These cracks are extremely effective at concentrating and magnifying stress. The cracks can be visualized as elliptical in plan view. The tensile stress at the tip of a crack is given by this equation, where 2L is the long axis of the crack, and D is the short axis of the crack. In rocks, the sizes of the cracks are proportional to the grain size. Thus, fine-grained rocks will have shorter cracks and be stronger under tension than coarse-grained rocks. In field 2, tensile and shear fractures grow by linkage of micro-cracks. Fracture propagation occurs in a zone in front of the fracture tip. The failure envelope in field 2 is defined by this equation, which is known as the Griffith failure envelope, from the scientist who proposed this equation. Field 3 is the frictional behavior. Here, the fractures are about at 30 degrees from sigma 1, theta is about 120 degrees, and phi is about 30 degrees. There are both normal and shear tractions on the fracture, and therefore the fracture is a shear fracture or fault. The failure envelope in field 3 is described by this equation. Tau is equal to C plus sigma times mu. Phi is the angle of internal friction. Mu is the coefficient of internal friction and is equal to the tangent of phi. C is the cohesion of the rock, and it is the intercept of the failure envelope with the tau axis. This equation is known as the Coulomb failure envelope, and it is the characteristic behavior of most rocks in the upper crust. Field 4 is the ductile behavior. Here, the sample deforms in a more ductile, distributed manner. The fractures are at 30 to 45 degrees from sigma 1, 2 theta is from 90 to 120 degrees, and phi is from 0 to 30 degrees. The fractures become nearer and nearer to the planes of maximum shear stress, which are located at 45 degrees from sigma 1. Phi becomes closer to 0 and the failure envelope becomes flat, which means that the differential stress at yield, or size of the Mohr circle, is constant, regardless of increasing confining pressure. This failure envelope is known as the von Mises failure envelope, from the scientist who studied this regime. This is the characteristic behavior of most rocks in the lower crust. This figure illustrates the three fracture criteria: Griffith, Coulomb, and von Mises. The different styles of fracturing are also illustrated: tensile, hybrid, shear fracture, shear bands, and plastic deformation. As you know from outcrops, rocks can have pre-existing fractures or planes of weakness. So, we should consider two failure envelopes: the failure envelope for the rock, in blue, and the failure envelope for sliding on pre-existing fractures, in red. Pre-existing fractures often have low to zero cohesion. Therefore, the envelope for pre-existing fractures starts at the origin. The slope of the failure envelope for pristine rock is phi, and the slope of the failure envelope for pre-existing fractures is phi s. The equation that defines the failure envelope for pre-existing fractures is tau equal to sigma times mu s, where mu s is the tangent of phi s. The range of values of mu s in rocks is quite narrow, and it goes from 0.6 to 1.0, with a preferred value of 0.85. The low range of values in mu s is known as the Byerlee's law. With the two failure envelopes, we must consider two possible cases. Will the rock form a new fracture, or will it slide along pre-existing fractures? The key is to look at the intersection of the envelope for pre-existing fractures with the Mohr circle, and the angle 2 theta at those intersections. Any pre-existing fracture whose normal makes an angle between theta and theta 1 with sigma 1, will slip in this stress state. If the orientation of pre-existing fractures is outside this range, a new fracture will be developed instead. This is represented by the intersection of the Mohr circle with the failure envelope of the rock. This is one example. The black envelope is the failure envelope for the rock, and the red envelope is the failure envelope for sliding along pre-existing fractures. For the state of stress indicated by the Mohr circle, any pre-existing fracture whose normal makes an angle of 49 to 80 degrees with sigma 1, will slide. This range of fracture orientations is indicated by the red areas in the Mohr circle and in the image of the sample. Fractures with different orientations will not slide, and the sample will not develop a new fracture because the Mohr circle is inside the failure envelope for the rock. As discussed before, fluid pore pressures affect the normal tractions but not the shear tractions. Fluid pore pressure shifts the Mohr circle to the left, an amount equal to the pore pressure. This can induce fracturing of the rock. As the Mohr circle moves to the left, it will touch the failure envelope, and the rock will fail. This is called hydraulic fracturing. Although fluid pore pressures don't affect shear tractions, as the fluid pore pressure increases, the size of the Mohr circle may be reduced to fit the failure envelope. In this example, the Mohr circles for fluid pore pressures of 40, 50, and 60 megapascals are increasingly smaller to fit the failure envelope. This is because states of stress above the failure envelope are not possible. At that point, the rock would have already failed. To learn more about this, read Chapter 7 of Fossen, and do his e-learning module on brittle deformation. And answer these questions.